Goeienaand. Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world as well. Now, what I love about YouTube and the community we have on this channel is that often you bump into people who you would never otherwise have met. And here is a perfect example of one. His name is Roland, and he is an old boy of Escort High School and matriculated in 1968. And still lives in the KwaZulu-Natal zone. But he's an old fart like me, and I think he'll accept that title graciously because I know the Escort High School very, very well, and it was one of the best schools in South Africa at the time. It's a state school. And the main reason it was one of the best high schools in the country was because of the headmaster, who was Reg Pierce. Now, Reg Pierce is someone that most of you will have never have heard of, but he was a remarkable man. He was quite small. He was only about 5'6", 5'8" tall, but he was a dynamo. And he really ruled that school. And he would have been headmaster in the days of Roland. And Reg had a farm out in the Drakensberg. And it was quite close to my farm. I often used to go and have a cup of tea with him. This is after he retired in the early 1980s, late 1970s. But what a remarkable fellow he was. Anyway, let's get back to the story. I'm totally off topic. Roland says, "Hello, Scott. I felt convinced that the BizNews article below would no doubt amplify your rant about black privilege and your very original parasite analogy. And yes, it does. Thank you. Thanks for all the entertainment. To me, it's both hilarious, if it weren't at the same time so tragic, but also true. On occasion, it might, however, be somewhat exaggerated, filled with paranoia, and lead you and your audience to despondency. As a coping mechanism, I hold on to the promises of Christ's return and the restoration of all things to godly order, despite the meltdown humanity will face prior to this momentous event. It has just started playing out in our beloved South Africa, somewhat earlier than first world countries." And then he signs off, "Kind regards." Now, what he's talking about here is a fellow by the name of Brian Molefe. And I haven't talked about Brian Molefe in the past, although I have been following what he's about. And I think it's time we actually looked at this in a bit more detail. Now, Brian Molefe is clearly one of those parasitic black privilege people who hung off Zuma's coattails in those days. And he is central to the state capture case and was very involved in enterprises like Eskom, where he was CEO for a while, and he was the one who worked with the Guptas. And, billions of rands just disappeared out of Eskom's coffers under his watch. It was quite disgraceful. He was also briefly a parliamentarian for the ANC. And he's one of those people who is Teflon coated. Just in the past 24 hours, for example, and I'll put these two newspaper links down below so you can have a look at them. The Citizen has reported, totally loco, Molefe and Singh's recommendations increased Transnet bill by 20 billion rand. Yep, you heard me right, 20 billion rand. And he was, at that time, head of Transnet. All these cushy positions because he was involved in this whole transfer of capital from state-owned enterprises to the well-connected through things like contracts and just blatant stealing. And in the Business Day, totally different paper, also appeared today. Brian Molefe's decision to overturn tender award to Neotel was indefensible. So you can see this guy's got a heck of a lot of questions to answer if he ever goes to court. But here is the main story. Brian Molefe, you might recall, was the laughingstock of South Africa when he claimed he was at a shebeen in Saxonwold after reports indicated that he had been in the vicinity of the Gupta family compound regularly. Later, Molefe burst into tears on television in 2016 at a conference on Eskom's financial reports, when talk turned to the state capture report compiled by former public prosecutor Thuli Madonsela. Molefe was a key link in allegations that Eskom may have fraudulently given money to a Gupta-linked company to enable it to buy a coal mine. Molefe has also vigorously promoted the benefits of a nuclear build program, which many believed would bankrupt the country, while its beneficiaries reaped the benefits of tapping into state contracts. Recently, details of Molefe's hand in state capture at Transnet have been fleshed out at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. The facts have angered many people who want to know why it is taking so long to put Molefe behind bars. Now, just on the subject, I'll just flesh that out just a little bit more. Brian Molefe was once one of South Africa's most respected business leaders. Now the call for him to go to jail for corruption is growing louder by the day, as evidence mounts about his integral role in aiding and abetting former President Jacob Zuma and his cronies in raiding state coffers. Now, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about black privilege and parasites. These are the sort of people I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the average black African who lives in a shanty or he's wherever. He's totally out of the system and he's a victim of this corruption. So we need to understand where black privilege begins and ends. It is the well-connected, it's the politicians, it's the people who've been looting the system. Now, when the politicians talk about white privilege, and I'm talking about people like Malema, the same scenario exists if we're to look at it on the basis of whites who have got a huge amount of assets, like the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers and people like that. I mean, they are extremely wealthy. Yes, there is white privilege there, and I will not deny that fact. There is white privilege there. But the difference is they haven't stolen. They just have a huge amount of assets that their families have built up over generations, and they've done it basically legally. And maybe they've done some improper things on the journey to getting there, but generally they are following the letter of the law, which people like Molefe are not. So when we talk about white privilege, it really only applies to a very few people who are extremely wealthy in South Africa. Most white South Africans certainly have no white privilege. They are battling because of things like BEE and BBBEE. It clearly mirrors what's happening with the black population. Most blacks are not members of the black privilege club, whereas most whites are not members of the white privilege club. So just to clarify, yes, there are some parasites right at the top of black privilege, and Brian Molefe is one of them. His government-produced biography includes his position as the following. Molefe was a Group Chief Executive Power Utility Eskom from October 2015, before Fuckamani came in and totally Fuckamani'd it up. Before that, he was the Chief Executive of Transnet, the state-owned freight transport and logistics company, and he headed the Public Investment Corporation between 2003 and 2010 with just under 1 trillion rand under his watchful eye. So there you have it. We've got a new player that's going to be appearing on this channel. You've got a bit of his background. He's a member of the Black Privilege Club. And please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell to get the updates. And have a great evening. Bye for now.